will you learn a language? You don't know what it is, but who cares, right? Congratulations.
Apple water, no.
That is a sign of fluid intelligence. The ability to put things together and recognize. You've never heard the word apple water, right? You've never seen this in your life. And yet conceptually, because you had a few cues, you memorized it, you analyzed it, you paid attention to it, you integrated it, you have a new concept in a completely foreign language you've never been exposed to. That's cognition right there.
Are the dots like accents?
The dots? No, they're part of the word. Like I has a dot on it.
Oh, okay.
Part of the letter. Okay. So now that we know you're all intelligent, let's move to you. Now, emotions are different because emotions are a response, an internal response to our interpretation of the world. It's how we perceive the world that defines how we respond to it. And there are lots of different emotions, but we categorize them in sort of 4 different ways. Love, as an affection, happy, sad, anger. And they're combinable, aren't they? You can love somebody and be mad at them. You can be happy and sad at the same time. Can you be happy and angry at the same time? Some say yes, some say no. Can you chew gum and whistle at the same time? It'll be tough. It'll be tough. It'll be tough. So there's some emotions that are so contrary that it's hard to hold them at the same time. So we transition back and forth. Even we do it so rapidly, we think they're the same. But the idea is that if we interpret things properly and put it in the right context, we therefore emotionally respond to it appropriately. An example, you are in charge of a 2-year-old. You're in a store. You know those racks of clothes, say at Marshall's or whatever? And you let go of the 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old decides this is a great place to hide, and goes in the center and hides. And then you look down and you say, holy mackerel, where'd she go? And what happens to you? Fear, right? It's not here. I'll tell you why. So you all of a sudden have panic, and then you start calling out, right? Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. And Charlie comes out and you see it out of the rack. Now what do you do? What's your emotional response?
Okay, happy and angry.
Happy and angry at the same time. The reason fear is the primary emotion for all things. Fear is the primary emotion for all negative emotions. So what we have in reality is fear and love, fear and attachment. Those two are the primary emotions that we feel, and then we kind of diverge from there. So being emotionally intelligent means you see the child come out, you say, oh, I'm so confused. And then you can say, oh, I was so worried about you. The reason why that's intelligent is because it's processed that information properly, and it says, I was scared, and that's what I'm going to acknowledge. I'm not going to say, God damn it, if you ever do that again, blah, 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 blah. That is an unintelligent, emotionally unintelligent way. And all of us go through that, by the way. So we're all emotionally dumb from time to time. I don't want you to think it's a perfect way of being, but that's the distinction between emotional intelligence and being emotionally unintelligent. So when you respond to your emotions in a genuine way, when you process the information and have had the appropriate response to it, then you will have you'll have emotional intelligence. So having understood that, I want to go here. Everybody, any questions, by the way, about emotions? With the art teacher, what was her EQ? High or low?
like she was only focusing on that, she couldn't get her attention on anything else, and she was getting frustrated and angry.
She wasn't recognizing or acknowledging her fear. What was her fear?
Lose control and being able to teach in one way that I don't know.
Yeah. Imagine the following conversation between her and James. James, come here for a minute. Listen, I'm a little worried about what you're doing. Why? Because I know what you're doing is fantastic. Actually, you're doing what people in the growth time used to do all the time. And it's very good, you're talented. But you know how people talk about nudity being bad and everything? I don't want the class or me to get into trouble for allowing you to do these things. Can you imagine that conversation versus he's a troublemaker, he writes inappropriate? It's a totally different mindset. That's emotional IQ. And when we get scared, actually, our emotional IQ goes down. When we get hurt, our emotional IQ goes down a lot. So we respond in anger, lack of clarity. So that's what EQ is all about. And these are the characteristics of emotional intelligence. I'm going to give you a couple of videos to watch for the rest of the time in discussion. First is self-awareness. A lot of us are not self-aware. For example, if you started the day on a bad foot, you started late, you're hungry, you haven't had breakfast or whatever, rather than saying, you know what, this is not a good start to the day, so I'm going to be aware of that, so that when I'm responding to something, I know it's coming from there and it's not the person or the thing that I'm responding to. So that awareness sets off your ability to be in emotional control. Second one is controlling emotions or impulses. Just because you have an emotion doesn't mean it has to be expressed right away. For instance, I have a favorite saying, you can cry and wash dishes at the same time. They're not contraindicated to one another. So your emotions do not have to be in charge of you to the point of disabling you or taking over. The second one is patience, which is the ability to defer immediate results for long-term gain. Some things are going to be uncomfortable. This is the Buddhist form of understanding humanity. In humanity, suffering exists. It's a part of suffering. If you accept it and say, yeah, I'm suffering right now, natural part of my life. But if you say, why should I suffer all the time? Why am I suffering? Why am I the only one who's suffering? Blah, blah, blah. It just gets things worse. And by the way, nobody's ever the only one who's suffering. But I want you to see what children do with this whole business of suffering. I hope this works. So, part of what we do is we have to defer our immediate gratification. That's really difficult for a child to do. Where it gets even more difficult in education is that they have to understand what the outcome is in order to kind of be patient. You guys are teaching a process-oriented subject. You have to take the paint out, get the brushes out. What is the kid going to want to do right away? Paint. Stick that brush in the paint and go at it, right? So you're requiring a lot of patience, and that oftentimes in the classroom, art classroom, can get in the way because the more process you have, the more patience you have to have. The other characteristic of emotional intelligence is empathy. The reason why empathy is important is because you have to be able to put yourself in somebody else's position. This video will take at least part one. I think it'll carry us to 2 o'clock. And we're not going to be able to do social skills at that point, but it's okay, because this is probably going to be the most important thing you watch for working with students of all types. So you understand exactly what part of the brain is involved in empathy. There's an identification of that center now. So I'm going to show you this. This was first discovered in 2005, I want to say. It was revolutionary, and it's become since very relevant to what we do in special education. Okay. We are almost there. All right, so I'm not going to show you the social skills one, but it's very related to that. The right side of the brain, the TMJ, slightly to the back, actually helps us understand social judgment. And we're going to talk about that on Wednesday. I'm hoping that everybody who hasn't been here can watch this part of the video. That way you don't have to repeat it. But this becomes, if you can understand, you can sort of take this concept and understand how a classroom environment works, how your human interactions are designed by it, then you can understand the importance of the atmosphere you set in a classroom. When you celebrate somebody's success, becomes contagious. When you become a dour, kind of a nasty person, that affects the environment. So remember we talked about the environment? The environment is more than just the physical environment. It's the nature of the interaction among the people in the classroom. All right. You're all going to fall asleep if I don't stop. Have a great day. Thank you very much.